is what we call
hater shit.
There is no better term.
You know me. If you know me, you know me. If you know, you know. You know, so. TikTok this morning, I had no makeup on. I have my makeup on now, and I'm here on YouTube to document a little about what's going on in my life, about what I've learned over the last several years, and about my own personal beliefs, morals, values, and ethics surrounding these subjects. The first speaking point I want to touch on is the Department of Child and Family Services. Historically, the Department of Child and Family Services can and will pretty much disrupt your entire life for any reason. I think that people who have money can escape this sort of mistreatment, and they can do so by, enacting certain privileges such as traveling frequently, keeping their children home from school, homeschooling or private schooling their children, et cetera, and so forth. But when you're talking about the overwhelming majority of us, my posture's been so poor lately. As people who are living paycheck to paycheck, who rely on the school systems, the public school systems, almost to serve as secondary, role models and parenting kind of figures, we are trapped. There is nowhere that we can go. We cannot run from these people, nor can we escape them. My name is Heather Gillespie, and I have worked in pretty much every capacity, from a factory worker to a retail worker. I was the administrator for endocrinology and rheumatology at Northwestern Chicago Lakeshore Medical Associates. I worked with many other doctors in many other medical capacities, Loyola, Alexian Brothers, and more. Those are just to name a few. And I've learned a whole lot in that time. Following my medical career, I began working in content sales. I began selling content through, very, I don't know what word to use, R-rated websites. I won't get into the backstory. That's a whole separate backstory that caused me to, or led me to, the advocacy work that I am currently surrounding my non-for-profit around, which is bringing light to the exploitative circumstances that lead to women being human sex trafficked or exploited for money. And women are not the only ones who are subjected to such exploitation. Men, in many times are also subjected to the same exploitation and are just too embarrassed or prideful to discuss it. So I'm bringing light to a lot of these circumstances and situations. But let's start with DCFS. When I began, I'm a great mother. I know myself. I know I'm a great mother. My support system knows I'm a great mother. My family members know I'm a great mother. My children know I'm a great mother. I'm a great mother. What does being a great parent mean? It means that you provide for your child. You provide food, you provide shelter, you provide clothing, you provide love, you provide support. Are there great parents who are being, held away from earning an income or tied up in other areas right now for a reason that is not their own doing or their own desire? Of course there are. Can they still be great parents? Yes, they can. Being a great parent is subjective to the circumstances in which you are living. It's not fair to the child not to have a parent in the household. It's not fair to the parent to be separated from the child. But to everyone's best ability, if you give what you have to your child, if you are as available as humanly possible to your child in your circumstances, you are a great parent. There is a law in the United States Constitution that gives us the right to parent our children, the right to due process. It might be the Amendment 14, but don't quote me on that. I have done research around it, and I'll talk about that in another live. Now, I never received any sort of problems or any sort of slander or libel in my life while I was working in medical. Never did I ever get accused of anything. Never did I ever become subject to some sort of investigation. When I began selling sexy content on platforms such as ManyVids, Cam Soda, there are a lot of them, Live Jasmine, there are many websites. When I began engaging in that sort of employment, it was not my significant others or former significant others. It was not my friend and family members. It was strangers who began calling DCFS. My name was leaked because I was using a performer alias name. I began being accused of, some sort of identity sorts of scam type of issues. And my alias name, much like many girls who work in private dancing and things of that nature, use a stripper name, if you will, or some sort of alias, that name was connected directly to my legal name. So for protection and to keep my family separate, I worked in that capacity with an alias. When my real name was leaked, my name is Heather Gillespie. It's already been out there. So my alias name was Coco Chanel YSL. When my alias name and my legal name were attached to each other, I began being bombarded by allegations, in-person harassment, online harassment and hatred, slander, abuse, and it affected every single relationship I had in various ways. If you can imagine a scorned wife. Now, a lot of my demographic and the people who are watching my content, they're usually around my age, pretty open-minded, like attracts like, you know what I mean? So the people who really are here, are friends with me, or who believe in the same things I believe in, they would never call DCFS on someone because they do sexy content, okay? So it's not someone who is my normal demographic. It's someone who most likely, and my guess is that it's someone who saw a charge on their husband's credit card bill or wife's credit card bill, saw that it was a purchase, maybe saw some direct payments through Zelle, through Cash App, through Venmo, or something like that, and they are a spiteful person, and they began to contact DCFS. DCFS, the Department of Child and Family Services, does not have the, let's call it evolution necessary to handle people who have a public following. It should be illegal. They're in direct violation of every single one of my rights, as they've been, for quite some time. Now let's talk about it. My children, before I gave birth to Weston, I have a 4-month-old. I have 3 other children, Viviana, Lewis, and Alexis. My children have lived with me in my home from their birth and gone to their father's houses on the weekends, usually 3 days a week with them and 4.5 days, 3.5 days with them, 4.5 days with me, okay? Sometimes alternating. Sometimes if I was, really busy at work, they'd spend 5 days at their dad's and only come home, on the weekend for me. But for the most part, I was the primary custodial parent for their entire lives. My children are now 17, 16, and 10. Weston is 4 months, but he's separate from this. As people began to be scornful and hateful and, all of these hater words that I could continue to list, DCFS would pop up and knock on my door unannounced. DCFS went to my youngest daughter, who was 6 years old at the time, went to her classroom, removed her from the classroom and brought her to the community hospital ER, where a man doctor who I did not give permission to, looked at her body to make sure she was not being assaulted.
Wow,
now, what on earth about that situation seems legal? What on earth about that situation seems ethical? The answer is none of it. On top of that, I had been threatened and coerced and extorted, and we can go over those words if you don't know what they mean. Basically, I was told, you're going to do X, Y, Z, and if you don't, I'll be back to take your children from you by law enforcement agents. I'm not against the police. If you think that I am, you have the wrong idea. I'm never going to be against the police. I'm never going to be against any one organization. There are bad people, there are good people, there are people who fall in between, there are people who were bad and turned good, there are people who were good and turned bad. People are static, forever changing. So what I'm saying is, my biggest vulnerability is the love, and most people, is the love that they have for their families and their children. Social media, which I am a huge fan of and has been an advocate for me and a large tool in business for me in many, many ways, social media allows people to be found. It allows people to live their lives in a public way that before this, only reality TV and sponsorships allowed. On top of that, you have background checking software available say there is no social media. I can download an app like Been Verified. That's just one example of many, hundreds. And I can download that app and I can pay a subscription, a monthly subscription, and I can have as many background checks as I want with very little upfront information. So it's very easy in the age that we live in to get information about people, find out where they live, find out their phone number, and find out, more, issues as such. Now, 7 times I was investigated by the Department of Child and Family Services for child abuse.
That's ridiculous.
7 times.
Yeah, 7 times.
The case was closed, unfounded, meaning I was innocent.
No.
Meaning I was not guilty.
You were guilty.
7 times. Just in the past 6 years. I have not sold sexy content or worked in that capacity since 2019. We are in 2024 today, okay? Besides that one issue with my child being taken out of school and taken to the ER where she was examined without my permission, there are numerous other instances where my children were bombarded with questions from strangers, where my children were led, baited, where my children were incentivized, scared, or extorted to give responses that they would not have if they were not under duress. And even with those responses, I was still found to be innocent. All of the allegations made against me were reported to the State Central Registrar for the state of Illinois as harassment. That is 7 investigations, all closed. I'm innocent, marked as not guilty, harassment. What's going on today with my 4-month-old is not only unconstitutional, it is absolutely illegal, unethical, immoral, and disgusting. Okay? I want to talk about the Department of Child and Family Services is in a situation where they, by whatever ruling is, or whatever governing body is, supposed to be holding them accountable, they are supposedly valid in separating a child from a parent before a full investigation has been completed. They are supposedly valid in accepting hearsay, lies, rumors, or pieces of truth out of context from the internet, from social media, and from people who refuse to identify themselves, and using it to separate families. We are not living in 2015, people. We are not living in 2005. We are living in 2024 when the internet is available to everyone. That means everyone can have a very public persona. And it doesn't have to be who they truly are. Anyone can be anything on any one of these platforms. That's not a good enough reason to march into someone's life and separate them from their child. We need new policy. And I have been begging for intervention, for civil rights intervention, for human rights intervention, literally since 2015, when David Shepard from the Chicago detectives literally extorted me and said, I know you're not friends with this group. I know you just met them 3 or 4 weeks ago, but if you don't hang out with them and text me what's going on every single day, I will be back to take your children. And that was the first time I was extorted with regards to my children. In 5 years, or a little under, from 2015 to 2014, 19, so 2015 to 2019, I was extorted by an officer of the law, David Shepard. This case was heard in an internal affairs courtroom.
I know you
in front of the
dragging his
detective
name.
and about 20 of his peers. And I was found innocent. Okay? After that, it started with strangers. Always I was found innocent.
Oh my
Never was I
gosh.
charged with anything, and my children were never removed from my custody. My children have legally remained in my custody until the day I was thrown out of my home unlawfully in 2020. So understand that from 2015 all the way until 2020, 5 years or a little under, I was being harassed in more ways than you could ever imagine. The Department of Child and Family Services will conduct a full investigative interview against you with no proof, nothing other than hearsay, but the Chicago Police Department will not investigate a murder, will not investigate a rape, will not investigate a break-in, a home invasion, or a theft without proper cause or numerous credible witnesses. I know because I have been on the victimized side of each and every one of those cases, minus murder, since 2019. I have reported them all to the police, not just Chicago police, Lombard police, Barrington police, which is Lake County police, Elmhurst police. I have followed up countless times. None of those agencies have launched any formal investigations into anything. None of them. And I'm still living in a literal homeless shelter. Well, it's a boutique hotel that they turned into a homeless shelter.
Boutique hotel.
While we
They're
try to figure out what the next steps are.
Get out.
I'm separated from my children. This is going into the 5th year of that separation, and I only have
That's
FaceTime
ridiculous.
and video chats and
Hell
text
no.
message as a tool and an outlet to parent my children, my babies.
Bet you have fucking 5 years.
My son is 4 months old and I breastfeed him.
That's sad.
You know, there's a lot going on with that case that I want to get on the live and say, listen to this. For a very long time, since I was 15 or 14 years old. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I needed a work permit the first time I got a job. I am representing a demographic
14 or
of people
15.
who have been going through the things that I have been going through for 20 years, maybe longer, maybe 50 years. I am representing a demographic of people, starting first and foremost with myself, who are afraid, historically have been scared to share their journey and ask for help.
Why is she being so dramatic?
I am representing a demographic of people who have had no choice but to engage in objectifying, harmful behaviors to survive. My voice will continue to represent a demographic of people who have been unheard, who have been unseen, and who have been ignored. But I won't stop there. My voice also goes to represent people who have money and power. My voice is going to be used to offer perspective from both sides. And I'm grateful that we have social media where all of the innermost workings of my mind can come out in a way that allows all of you to relate, to perceive, to weigh in. But I really want to leave this live with, there are 3 topics that I have to discuss today.
Goodness gracious.
That first one, the really, really jaw-dropping, shocking realization that as a person with a large social media presence, when I was first, affected by a stranger calling DCFS on me, and I'd like to reiterate and stress the fact that my 3 children, Viviana, Lewis, and Alexis, prior to Weston's birth, were never taken by DCFS or protective custody. Never, not once. My 3 big children lived with me by court order from their births all the way until the day I was thrown into the street in 2020, at which point in time they went to stay with their fathers.
But why?
Why would I have my kids in the homeless system with me? I would not. My youngest child, Weston, who was just born in February, I was homeless when he was born, which gave DCFS the right to put him into a protected custody until I have shelter that's adequate, that's deemed adequate by the court. I believe this is adequate shelter. However, I'm going to touch on that. There's something called FSS and Norman services that I've just recently learned of, and I want to discuss that as well. So I just want to reiterate, you guys, for anyone who's listening, DCFS, the Department of Child and Family Services, will break up a family for no reason other than a phone call from someone who does not need to identify themselves. Do you understand that? That means that if you have children and you have an enemy, that enemy can pick up the phone, anonymously call and say any sort of slanderous information, and you 1000% will be getting investigated by the Department of Child and Family Services. It will happen. But a woman, and I know I'm not alone in this, I know there are many women out there who have gone through this, and men I'm sure also, who has been robbed, raped, unlawfully thrown out of her home and into the street for a little under 5 years, and reports all of that to law enforcement, can be ignored. Not only did I report it, I provided solid evidence. So I don't think my ego is not so large that I believe I'm the only person who's ever been affected by these sorts of things, by these circumstances. As I said before, I'm fairly certain that the demographic of most of the people who are affected by them are ignored, unseen, unheard, or they're not believed in. There's something that they call discrediting a witness. It's a formal tactic that is used regularly when there is a witness who knows too much, who will do too much exposing. There are campaigns launched against that person, smear campaigns, slander campaigns, harassment campaigns, intimidation campaigns, crazy making campaigns. I have seen people and heard of people being admitted to long-term care facilities against their will who had no history of any sort of mental issues because they knew too much about a certain person, place, or thing. We are in 2024 where we have IT systems for every single government branch, where we have IT systems for medical records and medical record recording, where we have IT systems for every credit card purchase that's made, for every ATM transaction that's made, for every time you pass through a toll booth. We have biometric facial recognition data for every single time you walk into an airport or any sort of federal building. I want to know, in the absence of the assistance that we're promised living in this country, what is expected of this demographic so that they can have the same quality of life that everyone else wants? What is expected from these people so that they don't have to be harmed anymore? What is expected from them so that they can have children and be happy and healthy, and live well together, so that they can give their children and future generations access to all of the opportunity that the rest of us have had? My family has always worked incredibly hard. My mother has been working 6 days a week since I was a little girl. My father full-time at least 5 days a week. I'm doing manual physical labor. I've been working since I was 15 years old in many various capacities.
15 or 14, Heather? Which one was it?
I want to know if just simply being a decent human being and working full-time is not enough. What is it that they're looking for from us? What do we need to do? Recently, after the birth of my son Weston, and we're still going through all of the services in court, and as I said before, as tempting as it is for me to describe all of the ways that I have been unlawfully dealt with and manhandled systemically, hacked, my information shared, my confidential information shared, bullied, antagonized, baited, all of the ways that I have been unlawfully handled, I'd love to share with you. Unfortunately, and incredibly opportunistically, I was put under some sort of oath that I would not share the details of these investigations with anyone, so I can't. But I can share this. Recently, my family and I, shout out to my worker, Jessica, thank you so much. I appreciate you more than you'll ever understand.
Wow.
We were referred and accepted to a program called Norman Services.
Did she write notes?
Norman Services. I want to read this to you guys.
Please don't. Someone said don't let them
What
silence
is Norman?
you.
What is Norman? It is the policy of DCFS not to remove children for poverty alone. DCFS cannot remove your child or fail to return your child to you because of your living circumstances, i.e., lack of shelter, food, clothing, or other items, unless there is reason to believe that the conditions cause imminent risk to your child's life or health. If such does occur, DCFS has the duty to provide services to assist with these problems. DCFS has created services often referred to as Norman Services for families who have one or more children who are at risk of being placed in DCFS care or who have children who cannot be returned home. And one of the reasons for the risk is lack of food, lack of shelter, lack of clothing, or lack of other items that if providing this service will keep your child in your care, or if the child is in DCFS custody, will help your child return home. This is a phenomenal thing that I was pretty sure we had forever. That is just now 4 months into this process, almost 5. My son turns 19 weeks on Monday, so almost 5 months old.
That's crazy.
Just now we're being referred to this program. This is Norman.
You wouldn't go
by
to
DCFS,
any
and I'm
shelter.
going to post this on my Instagram, a GoPro Solo production, which I'm trying to use for more public outreach and ethical content creation. So as I've been saying since 2018, simply being poor is not a crime, nor is it a reason to separate a mother from her child. Xavier, can you stop? Xavier!
Wow.
Xavier!
Little bitch. We don't hear him. Ooh, mama about to get it.
Stop doing that. Xavier! Xavier!
She's so rude. What is he doing? Asshole. You gotta whoop him?
Stop doing that. Stop.
Why is he always on the fucking floor?
Sorry, you guys. So I think this is fantastic, and I think that it's important, and I think that
Sorry,
everyone...
guys.
I was telling someone this last week. I said to them, have you ever Googled anything about DCFS? And the search results were like, wow, DCFS changed my life, and they helped my family and I get through a really hard time. I haven't. So hearing about services like this are really reassuring, hopeful. It's exciting, I would say, at the very least. So it's basically, as I said, it's telling you that just not having shelter over your head, just not having money for food, those are not reasons to separate you from your child. And there must be a legal reason. There must be a reason. Either you are causing injury to a child, or you are beating your child, or you are leaving your child unattended in public spaces or in the household or whatever. And children 12 and up are allowed to be, home alone for short periods of time. And you can always leave your child with a family member if you have that luxury.
Girl.
But these are not reasons to separate the child from the home. And they are starting to realize the damage that is being done to these children, specifically in areas of adversity, in areas of low socioeconomic, perspectives, standings, incomes, mental health, underserved, all of these key words, all of these buzzwords for all of these groups, and identifying all of these people who are the most at risk for these types of exploitations. These laws exist. These services exist. So why am I involved in this for 5 years? I'm sorry, 5 months, and I just got accepted or referred to the program, a week ago. That's basically what I want to know. And
because you were doing more shit. It wasn't just homelessness.
That for your family, you will be offered these services if these are services that are offered to everyone. There's more I'd like to read.
Oh my God. Don't be homeless if you want a baby.
So, assistance in the form of cash, housing advocacy. In order to assist the family find affordable housing, DCFS has created the Housing Advocacy Program, HAP. HAP provides a worker to assist Norman families in obtaining housing. HAP workers will provide the following assistance: refer families to an emergency or domestic violence shelter, develop relationship with landlords through ongoing contact, provide apartment listings, prepare families to meet with potential landlords, assistance with transportation to view apartments or meet with landlords when necessary, assist the family in applying for income assistance, link the family to community resources to meet substance needs, subsistence needs, including the emergency cash assistance program, provide follow-up services to prevent future housing problems, transport appropriate families for domestic violence, negotiate with landlords, provide assistance to obtain subsidized housing such as Section 8, and more. Emergency cash program, security deposits for first month's rent, housing, utilities, food, clothing, furniture, transportation, and then other assistance programs. So this is all a referral. If you or your family have been referred to the Department of Child and Family Services, you are supposed to be in receipt of services. If your child was separated from you because you are an alcoholic, for instance, or because you are a drug addict, you have the opportunity to accept a referral from the Department of Child and Family Services to go through treatment for whatever that issue is and to be reunited with your child. That is the law. Now, if you don't have any one of those issues and you're still separated from your child, what do you do then? And I'm just going to leave it at that. Without getting into too much detail,
let's leave it at that.
What do you do at that point? The next point that I'd like to bring up is the fact that we have all of these lawyers, criminal defense attorneys.
Oh my gosh, this is
but
so long.
It's incredibly difficult to find a civil rights advocacy lawyer. Incredibly difficult. I have been looking for 5 years. For 5 years, I have been presenting detailed information that more than qualifies numerous different cases for a civil rights intervention. And I have not been able to find a single lawyer who says that they practice in civil rights and actually do practice in civil rights. There are many who are advertised. If you call them and if you give them the details of these situations, it's like this, they switch to personal injury. It's very, very difficult. And I know that a lot of civil rights lawyers, are not practicing because they are intimidated out of their practice. And if they have children or families, they become targets.
Just do what you need to do.
But criminal defense attorneys, they are fueling the system. They are just as bad as the broken system that so many people claim, is not working. So you have someone who catches a gun case and doesn't have any money. They have a gun, so that means they're probably doing something illegal, right?
Maybe it's for protection, you dumbass.
And the criminal defense lawyer says, sure, I'll defend you.
You're so ignorant.
I'll get you off, but I want a lot of money. So the criminal defense lawyer has an 8-year, 12-year degree at the least, is very intelligent, one of the most intelligent in society, I would argue. And this position is, they're going to say, you clearly don't have money because if you had money, then either your gun would be registered, you'd be carrying legally, or you wouldn't be carrying at all because you'd be protected or you'd pay for protective services, right? So we know you don't have money, but we know you can probably get some. So sure, I'll defend you, I'll protect you, but you've got to go out and you've got to come back to me with 100 grand, 40 grand, 60 grand, 10 grand, whatever it is. And so they're fueling this highly volatile cycle of abuse and violence because they're extorting these individuals. They are telling these individuals, you are going to face prison time if you don't come back to me with 100 grand or 40 grand or 20 grand. That is extortion. That is extortion. So systemically, these people are being bullied and extorted into committing more acts of crime and violence that affect and impact not only the most at-risk neighborhoods and communities, but that trickle over into all of the other communities. This seems very basic in understanding, as long as you just have a second to look at how just backwards it is. And you know what will resolve it all? Universal basic income. If we solve poverty, we solve all of these issues. There's another program that I was just recently introduced to that's called FSS. And this program is called Family Self-Sufficiency Program. Now, historically, first of all, I want to give them a shout out. This is through the federal government, HUD, Housing and Urban Development. I want to give them a shout out because they have office hours publicly documented. This for every single agency in the government that is accepting taxpayers' money should be required. There should be a public record. Xavier, can you please stop? There should be a public record of all of their office hours, all of their webinars, and all of the things that they go through. All of the things they decide on, all of the changes they make. This should be transparent and visible to everyone. It also helps people to understand you have this sort of constant updating, what's going on, what changes are being made, and what sort of implementations are leading towards the betterment of all of these programs. Now, with that being said, this is called the Family Self-Sufficiency Program, and I don't know all the details of the program, but what I do know is they house families, they help families get assistance. It's a 5-year program, and they aim to have families completely off of all welfare assistance by the end of the 5 years. Why haven't we been doing this since the beginning? Why has welfare significantly, I don't want to say imprisoned, but significantly, increased the likelihood of situational poverty, circumstantial poverty, and, poverty of convenience, poverty of, just convenience is the best word. It's a lot more convenient to not make any money at all and then have enough money for your groceries and public housing than it is to actually learn any life skills, contribute to society in any way, etc., and so forth. A 5-year program that's going to give people what they need and incentivize and assist people in getting back on their own feet, that is the answer. Hello? In this program, FSS, which supposedly my family has been accepted to, if so, I'm incredibly, excited about that. I can't wait to hear more. If this is the case, this program offers to families the assistance in housing, the assistance in cash, and then gives them a 12-month period of being off of welfare completely with their assistance.
I know, she really needs to fix this Wi-Fi.
They get off of the program entirely. So it's almost like they teach you how to not need welfare anymore and then hang around for a year to make sure that you've got it under control. These are programs that technology is going to allow us to offer, or is allowing us to offer, to the masses, to scale, to people at scale. So this is very, very important. This is definitely incredibly beneficial. When I went to the CHA, the Chicago Housing Authority, Xavier and I did go, and they told us that the average wait list for housing was 6 months to 25 years. Do you understand? Years. 6 months to 25 years is the average, is what they said. I couldn't believe it. They discussed that generationally the properties are handed down from generation to generation, which I understand. It's very likely that if you lived in poverty in a 1-bedroom, project unit, that your children would have, a lot of poverty barriers to overcome. And not that it's impossible to do so, but that it's highly unlikely, because we know the rules of psychology are that we will be influenced heavily by the people who are around us, and that we will be the 5th of 5 in any room. So the 5 people we spend the most time with, we will be like them in many, many ways. Children are not equipped to make the determination of who the best 5 people to spend time with are, so that they can have the best overall outcome of influence. Children don't know how to do that, nor should they have to. With that being said, the chances for generational poverty are incredibly high, very, very likely. Unless there is some external intervention, they will repeat themselves. Now, for me, my parents were middle class and working around the clock, and we haven't been able to break out of that. My generation.
You're not even working. What are you talking about?
My sister lives paycheck to paycheck. Might have a couple grand in the bank, not much. She's still in college debt.
Oh my gosh.
I'm still in college debt. I'm not even being permitted to work right now for whatever, reason that I can't really truly define. I've sent out resumes and applications as if my life depended on it, and I've not been assisted. So it's very troublesome to think about the future generations. And I want to close with this last thought. For
Just
Independence
close.
Day in this beautiful country, the United States of America, and for the entire world, we all had nothing at once. There was a time in history when none of us had anything. None of us.
So we worked for it.
And we all fought to take what we wanted. Property.
We worked for it.
Which was just land. And on that land, we built business, we built living conditions, whether those were condos or apartments or, shacks or houses or whatever it was. And if you weren't around in those times, or you didn't have an ancestor that was around in those times to build, your only hopes at having somewhere to live is if you rent a property that's incredibly overpriced and pay someone else's wealth, contribute to someone else's wealth. Or
why do you think everyone have free land and free houses?
For an incredibly large amount of money that most people will never be able to pay off in their entire lifetime of paying a mortgage. And that's assuming you never have financial hardship.
Hurry up, you're pushing me.
So the American system, and I don't know what goes on in other parts of the world, but I can only assume that it's similar, is broken. And in 2024, the day of IT systems that are logging all things everywhere, there is no reason for it. We must do better. We have got to do better. I am letting you guys know that there are a lot of people who are dumber than me. There are a lot of people who are smarter than me. But for the purpose of this point that I'm making, I want to point out there are a lot of people who are dumber than me, more ignorant than I am, more naive than I am,
knows what she's
exposed to less than I am. And they are sitting in very similar situations to where I'm sitting, being silenced and not being able to advocate for themselves or others because they don't know how to explain what's going on or because they've been threatened out of doing so.
No, we just do what the fuck we have to do.
If you already know and you've done nothing, then shame on you. And if you don't know, then now you know. So we have got to use our IT systems to the best of our ability to log all of our properties and to distribute them in a way that, in my opinion, eliminates ownership. Completely eliminates ownership. Why not create, and I've discussed this before on many of my platforms, why not create a giant Rolodex of property listings? Much like Airbnb. But rather than using those listings and Rolodexes to rent for money, just allow people to move into them. We can use AI and all of the advancements that we've made in technology to advocate for people who need to be advocated for, to provide for people who need to be provided for, and to communicate people's situations as they are while creating solutions for those situations. I want everyone to know that I've been sitting in my situation for 5 years, not because I'm complacent, not because I'm unmotivated, not because I want to be here. I have been doing everything in my power for myself and my children to get myself into a better situation. If there is no incentive, then what are we doing? If there is no incentive, meaning if good behavior is not rewarded, if following societal guidelines and norms is not going to be rewarded, then what will be? And if there is no incentive, then what's stopping people from, some sort of, retaliation? And if it's AI and radiation and all of these other very controversial subjects that I choose to, kind of steer clear of, if that is what they mean when they say under control, shame on all of you. Like, for real.
Yeah. Shame, know your name.
How dare you control people who have children and families and others who rely on you? How dare you control anyone but yourself?
How dare you?
We need to offer people opportunity. When you look outside on the 4th of July and you see the Pen filled up with boats and people celebrating and laughing and getting high and drunk and having weird disgusting, irresponsible sex with each
Oh my
other,
God, that's
doing
what you
weird
used to
boat
do.
orgies, and God only knows what else
Okay,
they've got
oh.
going on out there.
That's what Heather
And then
did.
you look on the other side and you come back onto flat land and you see people who are struggling to even have a burger. We can do better.
You can do better.
That's all I'm saying.
End the live. We're done.
DCFS should not investigate more than police.
What?
Humans have rights.
What?
And there should be someone to call when your rights are being violated.
Yes. Kids
And
have
we
rights.
need to be more
Babies have
solutions
rights.
oriented. I already have the solutions to my problems. How do I enact them? How do I impose them upon myself and others in a way that will create impact and solutions? Right now, just to give you guys another little update, and then I'm gonna sign off. We're living in a homeless shelter where we've been since approximately 3 weeks after my son was born. We went to an emergency shelter as soon as Weston was born. They told us that we would be there until we were transferred to permanent shelter. Permanent shelter is not forever. It's a shelter that's longer term, that you remain until you get a house or apartment of your own. And this is where we've been since March. We were told about 2 weeks ago that the shelter lost funding and would be closing down. That's not the case. There are people that are new that are moving in this week, but they continue to kind of bully us around and say, well, we're going to move you elsewhere. This is where you're going to go. We don't know where you're going to go. You might go here. You might go there. It's not pleasant. It's actually terrifying. We've bent over backwards to say we'll go, where we need to go to get our son back. Please just let us know what to do. The staff have been helpful in many ways. There's a new person who was introduced who I don't much care for, because this person was incredibly evasive and manipulative in working with another resource. Promised us that she went, above and beyond to get us into this space, Xavier and I. And I called there, and the woman basically said we were not allowed there. It's a treatment center, and you have to be on a locked down unit. Like, it's for people who are transitioning out of prison or who have severe mental or drug problems and need inpatient treatment. So we don't qualify to go there. I want to be with my child, specifically my infant child, but all of my children. My big kids are safe because they're with their father. My infant is in protective custody of DCFS.
And he is
my
safe.
infant. It's not fair. And like I said before, I continue to, use all of my resources possible to fight this in court. I want so badly to tell you guys what's going on in court, because it has been incredibly abusive. I can't even begin to go over the ways that it has been exploitative, abusive, and just completely unconstitutional. But if I do, they've threatened to hold me in contempt of court, which in itself should tell you that there's a problem. If it's against the law for me to discuss what's going on that's happening against me, that's unconstitutional and inhumane, that should send up some red flags to someone, in a position of power who can step in and help me. I hope that you guys have an amazing 4th of July. I wish that I could be out there with you, having fun and going on a boat ride. You guys, not the extra stuff. You can keep the orgy and the drugs and all of that, but a nice boat ride might be fun. Maybe a nice tropical drink or something refreshing. And a little tan maybe. A walk. Even I'd settle for even a walk on Lakeshore Drive with my children. And a fireworks show. That's the kind of 4th of July's that I've always had. The best 4th of July I ever had was actually with my entire family and extended family when I was married previously. And we took the kids to this park in Bensonville that had a phenomenal fireworks show, and we brought snacks, and it was just a great time. Friends came, family came. It was great. In 2017, I took my kids to the Doubletree Hotel downtown for a staycation. They have a rooftop pool at the Doubletree downtown. It was just me and the kids, my 3 big kids. Weston wasn't born yet. And I got us like a big platter of guac and appetizers, and ordered myself, a rum drink, a nice tropical drink, and we just laid on the rooftop all day. It was a nice sunny day. We got beautiful weather. And then at night we went over, like right in front of the hotel is Navy Pier, and they always do the fireworks there. But my daughter was 4 at the time, Alexis, or 5. She was 4, and she cried hysterically. She was terrified. So we left early. That's probably my number 2 best 4th of July ever. 4th of July, along with all the other holidays, have not looked the same since 2020 when I was unlawfully displaced from my home. I feel like I have paid the price for the mistakes of many, and I am eagerly praying to God every single day, as well as to the advocates and the team who stands behind me, that we continue to make progress in finding solutions. I'm not really looking for someone to blame. When I talk about David Shepard, when I talk about people who were involved, I'm doing it on purpose, not to blame them, but to mark in time how long this has been going on for me, and to really let you guys know that this is valid, this is real, to give you those details. You can look up an internal affairs investigation. It is public record. So you can look that up, you can fact check, and you can verify. On another note, David Shepard was let go from Chicago after that event, and picked up by Oak Lawn as a detective, where he worked for several years and was now, and recently last year or this year, nominated for Republican Party Senate. So that is very discouraging to me, that someone from law enforcement would be able to extort a woman, offer to take a woman on dates and do this and that, and I would always say no, and now he's running for a seat in the United States government. It's exhausting, and it's scary, and it's it does hurt. I don't want anything bad for anyone, including him. We all make mistakes, and we all do the best we can with the circumstances that we're dealing with, but you've got to understand me. It's been 4 years since I've been able to put my children to bed under the same roof as me, and I have a 4-month-old who's being affected, and I'm being affected continuously, and I've been nothing but honest, transparent, and helpful. So have a great 4th of July, you guys. I hope that you found some sort of value in the topics that I've discussed. I will continue to speak on these topics and discuss different variations of what I've learned, and advocate for myself and others.
The Geneva Conventions and their additional protocols is a body of public international law, also known as a humanitarian law of armed conflicts, whose purpose is to provide minimum protection, standards of humane treatment, and fundamental guarantees of respect to individuals who become victims of armed conflicts.
Do you guys know that the real global warming crisis or pandemic is that there isn't enough natural crime?
What?
Without the infliction of extensive amounts of abuses.
All right, I didn't get that. Let's bring it back. I'm sorry. I don't know if she's in the maybe she's in the bathtub.
Do you guys know that the real global warming crisis or pandemic is that there isn't enough natural crime?
What?
Without the infliction of extensive amounts of abuses and withholding of basic human rights, people are just not committing crimes naturally. And the people who are, it's obvious and apparent because of technology. So no one can commit crime without being caught immediately because of technology, AI, etc., and all the tools we have. So the real global crisis for global warming is that you can't get away with anything. But that should also mean that no one should be tortured or abused if you can't get away with anything. No one should be left homeless if you can't get away with anything. No one should be left hungry if you can't get away with anything, right?
Okay, so she puts this up, and then she says, it is our constitutional right, parent our children, be housed in safe spaces, have access to food and water and medical care, to live in safe environments, to earn money, to sleep. Imagine an emotional filter that caused everyone in control to see the people they were enforcing over as their children or parents or other loved ones. 4 a.m. breast milk pumping thoughts.
You guys know how we have filters, like, that make people look prettier or like an animal or older or whatever? Imagine we had a filter for life, like you didn't need a phone for it, that forced lawmakers and policymakers and people of power and control to see the rest of us as like their children or their parents.
So weird.
Before they did something to us, or before they imposed some sort of power or sanction or policy over us. Like, imagine before they could punish they had to look at the person that they were about to punish and genuinely feel like the type of compassion they would feel for their own child or parent. Imagine a filter like that.
So because I don't have any budget for my education right now, but I'm still very much interested in not wasting my time and furthering my education and preparing myself for any future career goals that I may have or develop. I've been doing audit versions through Coursera. I've now finished 5 courses. I'm on my 6th, and all I do is click enroll in the course, and then when it asks for the credit card information, I click audit.
$60 a month. How many months has she had this? This is doing nothing, Heather. Like, it's not going to a job. Name one job it's going to go to that's going to help you place. What? Come on, you're wasting your time.
And I click on the audit version, and I take the entire course. I have access to all the same stuff. I just don't get a grade.
I just don't get a grade. Do you get a job? No. I mean, are these like credits that go anywhere? I doubt it. I don't understand.
We're on our way to church. Good morning.
Stop recording yourself at church. It looks like you were already late. Yep, 9:15, you're late. Has anyone ever been bullied in church? God is always watching. Are you kidding me?